Foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with y'all.
Good day, Epic Cyclist. Today we're going to be doing an unboxing of a brand new product, the Nami Blast. Starting with, get yourself a knife. The white straps have already been cut off. I'm just going to cut through the tape. And we're going to reveal a brand new toy. Much awaited for, the Nami Blast. Kind of a unique design. As you can see, the packaging is very well done, very well protected. Inside the top, you'll find a couple of small accessories. Looks like we got a fender, a couple of plastic covers. I'll just put that down here. I'm going to remove a piece of foam. And by the looks of it, the handlebar passes through a hole. So I'm going to prop that up, feed this foam through. Be very gentle not to damage any of the electronics as they're floating loose on the handlebar. And there we go. First step. That can go away. Now, in the inside of the box, again, scooter is nicely wrapped in plastic, protected by foam, and of course in our cardboard box. This might be a two-person job. I'm going to see if I can lift it out by myself, but if I can't, we're going to pause for a moment and bring in another assistant here. So I would start, I guess. I'm going to try lifting or unwedging it. This is definitely a heavy one. All right, here we go. Step one. I'm just going to clean up my mess. Look inside the box for any other goodies. Inside the box, you'll see a cardboard box inside of the foam. That's going to be all of our accessories. Inside of our accessories box, I guess we're going to have our charger. So there's the manual for your brand new Nami Blast. We got a wonderful 5 amp charger with a cooling fan in it. Down below, there'll be a wrench or a lock ring tool, our wiring kit, our brand new style of plug, an Allen key set, and a head cap for the stem. We're going to need that a little bit later. I'm just going to put that aside, and this can all go back in the box. Keep it nice and neat for the next person. So continuing along, we just need to unwrap the plastic off of it. And one thing I will use, I'm going to use one of these foam blocks as my building stand, or my assembly stand in this case. And once again, we're going to give her a lift. Find a nice place to grip it. Get the horn down here. All right, that's nice and stable. Oh, perfect. Now we're going to finish unwrapping a few things. have a knife. This is about the only thing you'll need to cut off the bike. I'm just cutting through the tape so I don't scratch the aluminum. You want everything to look nice. Here we go. Okay, now we're going to get ready to build it. So we've taken all the plastic off. We've got everything just loosely assembled on the bike. I'm going to put the fender aside. This is the Allen key kit that you get with the bike. So it comes with every Allen key you would need to assemble it, should you need to, or when you need to, of course. Here's our stem cap bolt. I'll just put that on the deck. And essentially, I have a handy tool that I use for doing my own assemblies, but this tool has all the same Allen keys as what's held in my hand over here. So the first thing I want to do is just sort of line a few things up. I'm going to clamp the stem into place. So on here, just like the other Namis and other many scooters, we have a clamp to hold everything in place. And if I just want to reverse a few things, let's say I put this back up, this allows you to fold it down, and you can fold it back up. You'll drop this into place, and with the cam, very much like a bicycle quick release, you'll close that, and that'll firmly secure it in a vertical position. Just for fun, I'm going to aim the light forward. I'm just going to guesstimate this for now. I'll fine tune that a little bit later. So here we got our stem and handlebar combination. So we want it with the curved parts of the bars going upward. The cable will go off to one side of the light, or the cable kit that comes with it will go off to one side. I'm just going to roll this into place, and you'll see it will want to fall all the way down. And that's something we'll raise after we put the stem cap on. Stem cap, I'm going to put it back onto here. And I'll put some tension on that bolt. So it's not a bolt that really holds anything down. It just secures the stem from moving up. And in this case, it's acting more as a decorative part. So just to make it look nicer and give it a nicer finish. So I'm going to hold this up. I'm putting my thumb underneath, keeping the gap small over here. I'm going to just tighten one of the pinch bolts down a little bit. And from the front of the bike, I'm just going to line it up approximately to the direction of the front wheel. That can easily be adjusted once the bike's on the floor. And of course, when you're riding it, if you feel it's going in one direction a bit, you can just readjust these pinch bolts here. So for now, I'm just going to snug it together for assembly purposes. One thing I also like to do is I like to make sure that the bars aren't angled, sort of, how do you want to say, uncomfortably angled. So I'm going to loosen everything off just a tiny bit, just so that the bar can rotate, and that will be done on the front plate of the stem. So I'll just take a little bit of tension off every bolt. And if you'd like to look from the end over here, you'll see that the bars are rotatable. So there it is. That was definitely not a position I would like. Having them sweeping backward, personally, I don't think it looks very good, and I don't think it's necessary to have it that way, but it can be for your personal choice. Generally, I like them level with a bit of a back sweep. And we do that, set that up nicely. And when we got it where we want it, put a bit of tension, doing an X pattern on the bolts. And you'll see by the way I'm holding the tool, I'm not putting a lot of force in these bolts at this point. Just snugging them down equally. And now I'm going to give a little bit more tension. So doing the X pattern once again, start with one, give it some torque, exit across, a little bit of torque, go across the bottom, a little bit of torque, and across the top. And there she goes. Double check that first bolt to make sure that when everything seated itself, that every bolt has an equal level of tension. And I think that's good. The next step I like to do, is I like to set up the bars. So we can do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this just gently on the bar. You'll see the bolts are not on the clamp that holds the display. So this is our display here. I'm just going to gently flex these over, let them sit. There's our selector switch, which that'll go on the right side, or the left side of the bar. It's hinged as well, or hinged in this case. I'm just going to drop it on the bar and just put it into position. Okay, so here we're going to put on the display screws and the selector bolts. So in the little baggie here, we'll have 3 sets of bolts and 3 nuts. So going into the display, I'm going to put 2 bolts in. I'm going to hold the bolt. I'm going to put a small nylock nut on the back side. The nylock nut will fit into a hexagonal hole that will act as a wrench as you're tightening it. And this again doesn't need a lot of tension on it. We're not putting on axle bolts. This is just to hold the display in place. I wouldn't recommend putting a lot of tension or torque on these bolts. Just enough that the display is held onto the bar. And I like to leave it just loose enough that the display can be moved, or can move by itself should it get bumped by accident or hit with something. It's better that the display move than the mounting bracket break. So I'm putting the nut on the back side of the other side of the display mount. I'm going to put my finger on the nut there to hold it into place and just tighten down that bolt again. So we have the display in position. How will you know when it's tight enough? Well, the video may not reveal everything, so I'm just going to put just a bit of tension on it, and I'm going to try to move the display. So it moves fairly easily. And I'm going to center the display for style points. Again, everything should look nice. So that moves a little easier than I really need it to move. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit more tension on it. And we'll check it for motion, and that's good. It will move with a bit of force, but not so much force that I'm going to damage the plastic. Now the selector, we're going to put the last 2 little tiny bolts, so you'll get a very small bolt for the selector and a very, very small nylock nut that goes inside of the socketed hole on the back side. So here we are. The bolt going into the clamp, the nut on the back side. I'm going to gently hold it. I think we're going to use a 2.5 millimeter Allen key here. Put some tension on it before I tighten it into position. I'm just going to move it so it's not touching the lever and at a position that's easy to reach from your fingers when you're riding it, and also easy to view. And again, put a little bit of tension on that, and I can move it a tiny bit, so that's good. I don't have it locked all the way down. One thing I like to do is put the bars or the brake levers in an ergonomic position. So when you're on the bike, you know, like it should be easy to reach the levers. Sometimes the levers might be in an upward position. They generally don't ship them in a downward position, but I like to put a small angle on them just sort of to suit the rider. So to set up a little angle on the lever, I'm going to use a 4 millimeter Allen key. There's 2 clamp bolts on each side of the levers. I'm going to back off both bolts, top and bottom of the brake lever clamp. I'm going to just put a small angle on it. And that's an angle you can personally choose for yourself later as you're riding the bike. Some people may want it higher up, some may be a little bit lower. Depends on the height of of the rider. So if you're lowered to the bar, your hands are going to be more of an upward angle. And moving to the other side, we'll try to do the same thing here. Sometimes in order to move this lever, I need to move the controller, or sorry, the switches and the throttle. So first I'm going to just try to make an adjustment. I'm going to roll this down. I'm sort of looking at, okay, so it's touching something here. What it's touching is it's touching the throttle. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to loosen off the bolts that hold these into place so I can fine tune the positioning. Doesn't really matter which one you start with. In this case, the throttle will have a little tiny Allen key at the front here. So I'm just going to put the Allen key into the hole. And try to select the correct size. There we go. Just loosen it off a bit. And now there's our throttle is loose. And then I'm going to loosen off the selector switch. And you'll see I'm moving everything out of the way because the selector switch bolt or screw is sort of hidden below. So I'm just going to move it out of the way. From down below, we got our screw. So now I got all of these things floating around so I can position them. I'd like the lever in this position, so I'm going to match up the lever to the other side. Of course, when the lever is where I want it, I won't be able to reach the screw for the throttle switch. So what I want to do is I want to set these things up in a sequence, and as well as the selector switch too, as I can see here now. So I want that lever in this position. The throttle covers the button, the selector, or how do you want to call this? The throttle covers this switch panel. So what I'm going to do, I want the switch panel to sort of look the same as the selector panel. I'm going to let everything move away. I'm going to tighten down the selector, this panel here. And that's that. Now to the throttle. I am going to move the throttle into more of an upward position. And from the front, I will tighten that front throttle bolt once again. And now I will be able to put the lever at the angle which will match the other side. Switching tools. And I'm going to just sort of eyeball it so that those two angles appear to be the same. You could also look at it from behind the bars and just look at the tips of the brake levers to see if they're the same alignment with relation to the handlebar. Put a bit of tension on that. This is all done. So the whole top end is all ready now. I just want to double check my stem bolts. Stem bolts are vital for keeping the bike going where you want them to go. Never allow these things to come loose or to be left loose. And you can see I don't have to put a ton of tension on it. So I'm pretty much doing it with one hand. And because I'm here right now, the headlight, again, that's something that you'll probably fine tune later as well, but I'm going to just eyeball it for straight on. I'm going to tighten it to the clamp that goes onto the steer column. So now it won't go left or right. And the up and down action here, we got 2 bolts on each side. I'm going to put an Allen key into one side, put some tension on it. There we go. And then moving to the other side, there's another bolt just like that on the opposite side. I'll put a bit of tension on that. And I can already see that this light is aiming at the floor. I'm just going to tilt it up a tiny bit, and that's good enough for now. This is not a critical thing to do in the beginning. You'll notice that when you're riding, and you'll probably want to focus that light to give you the right projection that you want for visibility and lighting up the road. Top end is all done. Bar is clamped. Essentially right now, this bike is virtually ready to ride. So in the bag with the fender, we'll have our fender. This is a brand new scooter, so I haven't seen these pieces yet, but I think they have something to do with our motor wire. And here we have a couple of screws. We're going to need those. So that will be these are going to be for this clamp. All right, we're going to be re-editing a little bit here. The first one, we'll be setting up the fender, and we got the bolts are already installed on the fender here. And there's a bit of a bracket on this one to stiffen it. The fender will be mounted to the rear, and it goes off, everything's all one-sided on this. There's no swing arm on the opposite side. The whole hub is open, which is kind of a really cool design. The cantilevered arm is here, our suspension is here. And then of course, we're going to put the fender on. You'll notice two of the bolts are a little bit longer than the ones on the other side. So the longer ones are the ones we're going to loosen off, and we're going to clamp them into this position here. And that will be in that position, holding the fender in place. So first thing I need to do, again, select another Allen key, and that will be on your kit. In this case, I'm going to use it on my tri key here that has all the three sizes, all the three small sizes that I use. I'm going to spin those bolts out, put them up on the deck. Now, this being the first time I've set this up, I'm just going to check. All right, so the bolts are going to go through these holes, and they're going to clamp to the back side of the plate, and you'll see a tiny gap here that you're going to open up, where which this is going to go in between. So very carefully, I'm going to slide it over here. There we go. So now you could see the bolt holes where we're going to go, where we're going to attach. With my fingers, I can just snug that down by hand. Second bolt will go through to that plate and adjust that by hand. The holes are sort of oval shaped a little bit, so it gives you a little bit of room for adjustment. I'm just going to hold this square, snug down the bolts, and now these pieces are pinching onto the fender stay in this case. And you can see again, I'm not putting a lot of tension on. We don't want to strip these bolts, they're very fine bolts. Something I might actually do in future builds is I might put a little tiny bit of blue Loctite in there. As you can see, this will vibrate a bit, and bolts sometimes come undone. So a little bit of Loctite wouldn't hurt. These were already installed at the factory, but I will test them to make sure that they're tightened, and that feels good as well. All right, fender is on. Okay, with this new Nami Blast being a one-sided arm, and here's where our power cable comes out from the motor. They've given us a protector, which is quite ingeniously designed. It's going to cover up this whole area. So we're going to slip this over. It's going to go over the cable and over the nut. And what I will do is I'm just going to give it a little knock, and she's in place. There's a hole here for the bolts that they provided. I'm going to pass a bolt through. We have also a small nylock nut that will go on the back side. I'm just going to finger tight that into place. This nut will require a 7mm wrench, or you could use a plier if a wrench isn't handy. So I'm going to hold the nylock nut, and I'm going to turn the Allen key or the bolt there and just pinch it down. As I'm pinching it, I just want to make sure that this is as close to the frame or the nut as possible, just to bottom it out. And that feels good. Solid. Rear one is finished. Now we're going to put the front one on. Got one here, and the screws, and we just move up to the front. So both of these are exactly the same. The rear or the front, doesn't matter which one you put on first. So we just put it over the nut again. And the cable, give that a little knock, put the bolt in behind it, Put the nut on the other side. And with a 7mm wrench and an Allen key, I'm just going to snug that down, holding the nut on the back side. And you'll see it's probably moving away from the nut there, but that's okay for the moment. So I'm just going to give it a little knock so it's nice and flush. And snug this thing down again. And that's good. Now we got the cable covers on. One of the final things we're going to do here, we're almost finished building the scooter. We're going to go to pumping up the tires and topping them up to full pressure. So these will have a regular Schrader valve, just like your car has. We got a bicycle pump here that the head will fit all styles of valves, especially this one. We put it on. If we take a look at the gauge, we'll see that the factory gave us, I don't know, about 20, 30, 32 PSI. We're going to take it up to 50. All right, so we take it up to 50 PSI. And that's good. And of course we have to pump the rear tire. Move around to the rear. And we just put the pump head on, lock her in, and take that up to 50 PSI. That'll do it. So now we're fully pressurized. And one of the last things you'll probably notice, actually the scooter is now perfectly built and properly set up. One thing you'll probably notice is you're going to find a wire that seems to be coming loose on the scooter. You'll find that on this side here. It's actually not a loose wire. It's a wire that isn't necessary. It's normal for it to be in this position. So we're just going to tuck it into the frame and just keep it inside of there. It's something that would be used for possibly accessories or a diagnostic on that. So it's not something that's disconnected or needs to be hooked up. So no worries if you see that wire, just put it off to the side. You won't need to deal with that at all. All right, so now your Nami Blast is all built. It's ready to go. You're ready to ride. All you need to do is charge it up fully. I suggest charging it to 100% before you take it out for its first ride to condition the battery properly. Read the directions, read the manual, and have tons of fun on this thing. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment, we'd appreciate that too. Outside of that, have an epic day and enjoy your rides.
Mini skirt on, dip my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the boys want a picture. Two forward cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya. Mini skirt on, dip my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the